This spicy chain burn deck is coming up. To the summer of love. We're jumping right into this with Absolute King Backjack. It's Pot of Duality for traps. You get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, rearrange them in any order you like, and you can banish this card from your graveyard during your opponent's turn, so it's a quick effect, and excavate the top card of your deck, and if it's a trap, you can set it directly to your field, and it can be activated that turn. So this can help get to your battle traps or whatever. If your opponent decides to destroy this, then they might be in a world of hurt because it can help you search out your cards before you draw them. Then we have one card D, and this is our last monster card. Oh, and also do stay tuned for the side deck because that is really important for this deck, and whereas it's not complete, I need to fill in 4 cards. Those are all the cards that actually matter for this deck itself. So yeah, but card D, it's you normal summon it, end your turn, and draw 2 cards. Pretty cool. That's pretty much it. The only thing that you might have to worry about is getting ashed, which is a problem, but it's just something that you kind of have to deal with in the deck. Then we have our 3 card of Demise, best card in the deck. It's basically draw 3 for free. In most situations, you might end up sacking one of your monsters. Like, I have run into a situation where that's happened. Especially when your opponent makes you go second, that's going to happen a lot more based on the cards we cite in. But, yeah, then we also have 3 Pot of Duality, not as conflicting, because there's no real drawback to it other than you can't special summon, and it's just to draw 1, but you get to choose the draw out of the top 3, so it's almost the same thing as Card of the Mines, except you can only have the most important of the top 3, so it's sort of interesting in that way. Moving on to some of our burn spells, we have the 3 Dark Room of Nightmare. Actually, almost no burn players run this, and I do understand why. It's an initial neg 1, and it only does 0 damage when you activate it, but your opponent typically isn't going to use their cards on, like, they're not going to put effort into getting rid of this, so it's just going to be bumping them for 300 damage every time you activate one of your burn cards, and we run 20 of them, including these, so I guess technically it'd be 17 for each of these individual cards, so each of these can do 2100 damage in their lifetime, or not 2100, that's way less. Each one can do 5100 in its whole lifetime if you were to use every single burn card while it's on the field, and 2 of these, that's going to be game just on its own, so that's why I run it, because I think it speeds up the win condition. Not everyone runs it, so if you don't want to, I understand. But we have our 2 Chain Strike as well, which is truly the core of the deck. It's called Chain Burn because of this card. It's just 400 damage times the Chain Link 2 or higher. Before I continue on to the traps, I just want to say that with all of your burn cards, when you're activating them, make sure that you're at least dealing your opponent for 1000 damage, because you want to get it over as soon as possible, and if you end up wasting your cards by having them only do like having them burn for less than 1000, your opponent's going to end up killing you before you have the chance to burn them to death, because if you do it at 1000, all you have to do is use 8 of your burn cards and you'll be fine. Whereas if you use them as opportunistically, if you use them proactively, like whenever you have a chance to use them, you're gonna end up wasting a lot of your cards and not be able to pull off your win condition. So make sure you're slow playing this deck. Alright, moving on to our traps, we have our 2 Ojama Trio. Even though it's at 3, I still want to run it at 2, because in the Link format, it's super dangerous. When we first started with the Link format, when we just had Code of the Duelist and Link Strike, it wasn't as big of a deal, because your opponent was pretty much just going to be getting a Decode Talker off of it, but now you run the risk of them getting a Saryuya or a Borolo Dragon, or even a Firewall, So it can be extremely dangerous to play this, so you need to make sure that when you're playing this, you're going to be getting off a lot of damage. So don't just play it whenever you have the chance. Make sure that you have at least 3 of your other burn cards set to be able to fully take advantage of this card. You should be winning the turn you activate this, pretty much. Because if you don't, your opponent is probably going to win the next turn. So you need to be careful. I've even considered bumping this down to 1, but I think that that'd be like wrong to do of the deck, since it's always been a staple at 2. Next we have Balance of Judgment. This is an insanely good card. So you draw cards equal to the difference between the cards your opponent controls and the cards that you control, as well as the cards in your hand. So the combined total of your field and hand, whereas for your opponent it's just their field, and if your opponent has more on their field than every card in your hand and field, then you draw the surplus. It's a complicated card, but it comes in handy a lot, and it's usually like a draw 5 or something. It can get pretty crazy with it. Then we have our 3 Reckless Greed, because these can stack on top of each other. So it can be pretty broken. If you can get all 3 on the field, it's a draw 6 for pretty much free, because you're only skipping your next 2 draw phases. So it's a draw 4 for free and a draw 2 for 4-2. So yeah. Then for our battle traps, we have our 3-dimension wall. It's a better version of Magic Cylinder, since it doesn't interact with the monster, just the player. So it's really good for that reason. And then we have our 2 Blazing Mirror. Oh, also, I guess if you don't know what Magic Cylinder does, it's just anytime your opponent would attack you, they would take the damage that you should have taken. So yeah. And then we have our 2 Blazing Mirror Force, which destroys all of your opponent's monsters when they attack you, and both of you take damage equal to half of the combined total of those monsters' attack points. So it can be game-ending. If your opponent gets an OTK board, then you just pop this open, activate a few more of your burn cards, and it'll be game. This is typically going to be your finishing move, so make sure you use this at the right time, but also make sure that you're not going to be burning too much on yourself. Then we have our 2 Threatening Roar. This just prevents your opponent from being able to attack. It seems like it's kind of a bad card on paper, just because you're negging 1 and then your opponent can continue to extend their plays. It doesn't punish your opponent in any way. It just makes it so that they can't attack. So, which might even be like, if anything, it's, I don't know, it's a complicated card because of how simple it is. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a card that I wasn't originally running because I didn't like that it didn't benefit me in any way. It just protected my life points. But with Chain Burn, life points kind of are a resource because it's also your weapon. So it's kind of weird. Next up, for our final round of burn cards, we have Secret Barrel, 200 for every card your opponent controls or in their hand. So this can get pretty crazy pretty quickly. The 200 damage can really start stacking up. And it punishes, well, this one just punishes good decks. If you're going against the meta, Secret Barrel punishes your opponent just for playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Whereas we have Secret Blast, which just punishes players that are overzealous and commit too much to their plays, and commit too far, because it inflicts 300 damage for every card they control, so it doesn't count the cards in their hand. So even if they're just getting hand advantage, this one doesn't count for hand advantage, whereas Secret Barrel does. This one is just for overcommitted players. Also, though, if it were to be destroyed by your opponent's card effect, it inflicts them for 1,000 damage anyways. So if your opponent doesn't have a lot on their field, but they activate like an MST or Twin Twisters, and it gets popped, they'll still be taking 1,000 damage. Then we have our 3 Just Desserts. It's 500 damage for every monster your opponent controls, so a maximum of 3,500. But you're typically only going to get 1,500 off of them, which is completely fine, and it's a pretty good card for that reason. Then we also have 1 Cease Fire as our last card in the deck, or in the main deck, which is basically just another Just Desserts, except that it only includes effect monsters, and it also works for your monsters as well. So if you control an effect monster, your opponent would take another 500 for that effect monster as well. So if you have Absolute King Backjack, or you have Card D, before you tribute it, of course, to activate its effect, you could use this and then get an extra 500 damage into your opponent. So it can be better than just Desert sometimes. Now moving on to our extra deck, we have... Actually, I'm going to go over the side deck first because I think it's more important. So for our side deck, we have 3 Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, and that's everything past the Borreload Dragon that you see in the extra deck is just for cherries. Because it's so convenient to be able to just ditch a card and then take out your opponent's boss monster before they can even summon it. With the exception of, like, one of the cards in there isn't really a Dex boss monster. It's just a convenient card. We also have 2 Lava Golem in here. Well, all of these are for going second, by the way. Like, if you know your opponent's going to go first, you side to go second. Because that's what the meta is right now. So 2 Lava Golem as well, because if your opponent sets up a crazy board, you can just break it down. A Grinder Golem for a similar reason. This allows you to go off on your own combo to get out Borreload Dragon. And what you're going to be siding out for this stuff is going to be Card of Demise. Like, you're not going to side out all of them, of course. Like, that'd be crazy. It's one of the best cards in the deck. But you're probably going to side out 1 or 2 of them, at least. Like, if you wanted to, you could side out all 3, because we have plenty of draw cards in the deck as it is. So if you feel safe enough with siding out all of your Card of Demise, then go for it, because it might win you the game faster. It's just a matter of whether or not you get the right draws. But you can take out your Card of Demise, you can take out some of your Battle Traps if you want. You can take out your Darkroom of Nightmare if you don't like it, or even your Absolute King Backjacks. So that's just sort of what you're going to take out. We also have a Monster Reborn, because it can be detrimental. I meant to put the Raigeki first. So yeah, the Raigeki is also a really interesting card, because if you activate those Ojama Trios, you wouldn't have to worry about your opponent doing something crazy with them next turn, because you could just Raigeki them, which would be pretty cool. And then last for our side deck, we have 3 Cemetery Bomb. This is something that you'd side against something like Lightsworns, or any deck that goes really crazy on their graveyard. So World Chalice is one. They send a lot of cards to their graveyard. Burning Abyss, Blue Eyes, any sort of dragon deck. But there's a lot of decks that Cemetery Bomb affects, and you can take out almost anything, and this can be game-winning. Because there's so many decks that just fill up their graveyard and use their graveyard as a resource, that Cemetery Bomb just tells them no. It's only 100 damage for every card in their graveyard, but it can really stack up. And like, I know that when I play World Chalice, in one turn I go through 18 cards in my graveyard, like on average. That's pretty insane. So that'd be 1800 damage just because they were playing their deck. So it can be pretty crazy with that. Now moving on to our extra deck, we do have the 2 Link Spiders, the Akashik, the Proxy, and the Borreload Dragon for the Grinder Golem combo. So obviously you're not going to be using your extra deck the first round of the game that you're playing, but when you're going second, you're going to be using this a lot, kind of, in a weird way. So then we have, for our cherries targets, we have Lapis Lazuli for the Gem Knight FTK, Vortex Dragon for Odd Eyes, or just Pendulum players in general. ABC, this is going to be a game winner right there, because if you take out an ABC player's ABC, they're going to surrender pretty much, because when you have a turbo deck where there are turbo monsters in the extra deck and it can be cherried, it's so good, because then they just have no way to win anymore when you're literally banishing their entire win condition. So it's hilarious to activate this. And I'm probably going to put a clip of it in the beginning of this, like before the intro or something, because I think it's funny. Invoked Mechaba, this is obviously for the Invoked deck. This isn't going to absolutely kill them, but it will put a huge dent in their strategy and make it a lot easier to win, because Mechaba will take care of a lot of your cards. Aside from Lord Omega, anytime you see your opponent summon a tuner, just go ahead and activate this, because they're probably going to be, unless it's like a weird deck, I guess, where like they're playing tuners in something else. So if you know they're playing something else, then obviously cherry that. But if you don't know what they're playing, but you know that they're playing tuners, go ahead and cherry this because they're probably playing Omega. It's the best synchro in the game. If you're playing synchros, you should be playing Omega. We also have Totally Awesome for Paleos, Dante for Burning Abyss, Minerva for Lightsworns, Imduke for World Chalice, which is somewhat questionable. I was stuck between this and Aurum, but from what I've seen, Imduke is more impactful for the World Chalice players. Because World Chalice typically just goes for like Saryuya or something now, and how they get there is using Imduke to just spam out other monsters from their hand, and this is so Imduke is a good hit for your average World Chalice deck, but for my build, as you saw, Aurum is my most important card, so if that were ashed, I'd pretty much just scoop. And then last but not least, Heavy Metal Foes Electromite. This is obviously for any Pendulum player because they're playing Electromite. So if you see Pendulums, go ahead and cherry Electromite because they will be playing Electromite. Any Pendulum player would be dumb not to be playing it. So if your opponent summons a Pendulum, searches a Pendulum, anything, go ahead and cherry Electromite, and you should be fine. They're still going to be able to do their thing, and you need to be aware of that, but just know that Electromite is going to be probably your biggest problem to get over. So if you cherry it, you're going to have a lot better chances of winning that duel. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile, and if you did, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time, and as always, have a roaring good day.